Hi, everyone. This is Katie Thornton, and I'm part of the data science team at the Institute for Research and Poverty. I'm responsible for merging data together for the Wisconsin Administrative Data Corps, also known as WADC for short. Today, I'll be discussing the history of the data corps, the data sources involved, and how the data are put together. WADC evolved from a series of evaluation projects conducted by IRP for the state of Wisconsin, including the Court Record Database Project. For that project, IRP collected data on divorce and paternity cases on the state's behalf going back to 1983, and this project is still going on today. In the earlier years of the CRD project, the data were merged with UI wages, medical assistance, AFDC, and food share data. And then in the late 1990s, we had the Child Support Demonstration Evaluation Project. For this project, we studied all TANF recipients in a 5-year period. These recipients were matched to UI wages, medical assistance, SNAP, and child support data. It was during this time that we gained online access to CARES, which is the state public assistance data, and KIDS, the state child support data. In 2009 through 2010, we had our TANF data integration project, and it was at this point that the very first version of the Wisconsin Administrative Data Corps was created. Funding has been primarily through research projects funded by grants and contracts from state and federal agencies. The original funding allowed us to develop expertise in child welfare data and merge it with the universe of data from CARES and KIDS. There are a number of individuals involved with the data corps, including our administrative director, Hillary Shager, programming and data supervisor, Lynn Weimer, technical director, Katie Thornton, data sharing and institutional liaison, Steve Cook, data security officer, Maggie Townsend, budget and pricing, Stephen Lynn, and a number of individuals from our data science team who help create data for researchers. Researcher files for the Wisconsin Administrative Data Corps are updated annually, and they're available to those who have requested and gained permission to use them. Data use is authorized by project, and access to data is defined by state systems and version or year of the Wisconsin Administrative Data Corps. Individuals on approved projects are granted access to the data corps only after completing IRP data security training and signing a confidentiality agreement. They must also meet the UW requirements for human subjects training, HIPAA training, and outside data activity reporting. More information can be found at the website located at the bottom of this slide. Our current Wisconsin administrative data resources include AFDC, TANF, SNAP, Medicaid, and Badger Care from the CARES data source, as well as CRN, which predated CARES. We also have child care subsidies from CARES, child support data from KIDS, unemployment insurance benefits, child protective services data from WSAQUIS, incarceration data from the State Department of Corrections, as well as Milwaukee County Jail, school data from the Department of Public Instruction, and Medicaid claims data. We also have UI wage records. We do not have the full universe of UI wage records, but we do include UI wages for any individual already included in the list of fully linked data sources. We've also done specialized matches for specific projects, including Department of Revenue, SSI records from CARES, vital records, circuit court records, including foreclosures, family court records, TANF applicants, parent surveys, child support non-custodial parent, employment demonstration, and juvenile circuit court records. So you may wonder why the state doesn't integrate its own data. Why does IRP do this? And there's many reasons for that, including most administrative records are not designed with a strict requirement to maintain a single record per individual. We frequently see individuals listed more than once in a data source with different PINs and perhaps with different roles. For administrative purposes, it's not necessary to link those records together, but for research purposes, we might want to do that. Also, there's no commonly agreed upon set of high quality identifying variables. Data sources were not designed to be linked with one another. Agencies vary in quality of specific demographic variables for very legitimate reasons. For some agencies, the quality of Social Security numbers are very important, but for others, the SSN might be self-reported by the client and not as important. Agencies with distinct missions face challenges in determining which data source takes precedence or how conflicts should be resolved. Data sets change over time, and historical records of these changes need to be maintained. IRP keeps historical records of point-in-time data, while the state archives some data. IRP can resolve difficulties for research purposes. The data do not need to be legally accurate. If two different people were given one single ID in agency records, that would be unacceptable for administrative purposes, but for research purposes, we can strike a balance between overmatching versus undermatching records. In these next 3 slides, I have some Venn diagrams to illustrate the history of the data integration project. This first slide is our original model from the 1980s. And in this model, there's a purple colored in circle in the middle representing our CRD data of divorce and paternity family court cases. And those cases were matched on parental SSN to family court records, AFDC data, food stamps, and UI wage records. And then in our improved model, we had the full population of TANF individuals in a 5-year period, and we merged those with SNAP, child care subsidies, UI wage records, and child support data. And it was at this point that we gained online access to state records on public assistance and child support. And we did the merging on Social Security numbers, names, sex, and date of birth. And this is our current model, where we now have the full population of several data sources: CARES, SACWIS, DPI, KIDS, DOC, and we have other data sources not included in here for simplicity. And we merge all those data sources with UI wage data. So now we have the full population of several data sources, and with this model, we can measure program participation overlap much more accurately. And in the past, with just a sample, we were limited in the types of analysis that could be done because we did not have the full universe. So now I'll talk about how we merged the data and the creation of a master file. So the goal of the master file is to structure it as one record per individual, including all adults and children. And the process is to merge all individuals from all primary data sources using identifying variables with some combination of the following traits: commonly recorded variables, including name and gender; uniquely identifying variables, including Social Security number and taxpayer ID; immutable variables, including the date of death, place of birth, birth mother, and date of death; other variables, including parent names, race and ethnicity, and cross-system pins. We rely very heavily on social security numbers, dates of birth, and names. Other variables are very helpful, but not always used or required. Methods for matching include deterministic, probabilistic, and something we called chaining. And this is an example of chaining. In this example, we have Maggie Simpson in the first 2 records, which come from KIDS. You can see date of birth is missing on the first record, and the names don't exactly match between the two records in kids. Although Maggie is a nickname for Margaret. And we have social security numbers that are not exactly the same. There's a couple numbers transposed. It's a very close social security number, but not exact. So with this information, I would not feel comfortable putting those two kids' records together based on the match not being close enough. But then when we bring in CARES data, and we have one record from CARES, Margaret Simpson, with date of birth matching the second record from kids, and a social security number which matches the first record from kids. So I would feel comfortable matching this CARES records with this one CARES record with both of the records from kids, because Maggie is a nickname from Margaret, and the social security number matches exactly with the first record from kids. So I can feel comfortable making that match, and also feel comfortable making the match between CARES and the second record from kids, because the name matches exactly and the date of birth matches exactly, and social security number might not match exactly, but it's pretty close. So because we have this record from CARES, we're able to put those two records from kids together, whereas normally we would not be able to do that. We also use mothers, information about both mothers and fathers, and in this example, we're using mother's first name to enable these matches. So now we've got Bart Simpson, or Bartholomew, with a date of birth that matches in the first two records with kids and CARES. And social security number does not match at all between the three records, but it's missing in one record, and in the first two records, there's a close but not exact match. So if we didn't have mother's first name, I would not feel comfortable matching any of these records together, because we just don't have enough of a close match to do that. But bringing in mother's first name, we now have more information, and we can make those matches. So here's an example using an early version of the data core master file. So if you look at the numbers in the first column, these are number of pins coming from the raw data. And in the second column, you can see after we unduplicate individuals within one data system, you can see the number that was reduced just based on matching within a data source. We have the decrease in the numbers will vary depending on the data source. Kids tends to give more pins per person, and Milwaukee Jail data does as well, because every time a person enters Milwaukee Jail, they get a new booking number. After we chain with other data sources, the numbers go down even more. And then you can see in the final column, the numbers reduce even more based on removing duplicates after using information on mother and child identifiers. We do not have mother-child identifiers in all data sources, which is why there's no number for Milwaukee Jail in the last column. So this is an example of what we can do with data integration. This is looking at court record data parents across data systems within the 2019 version of the Wisconsin Administrative Data Core. We're looking at divorce and paternity adjudicated fathers and mothers and looking at the percentage of those parents who are in each of these data systems. And you can see the percentage overlap is fairly high in the kids data because that's child support data, and most paternity adjudicated cases involve child support, whether child support was ordered or not, as well as divorce cases. You can also see that more of the paternity adjudicated mothers and fathers are in our CARES or public assistance data than divorced. And we have the same story with SACWIS, which is a child welfare data. And you can see that we've got 25% of paternity adjudicated fathers have been incarcerated in the state prison system. Compare that to paternity adjudicated and divorced mothers, we have much fewer. So it's just an interesting example of what we can do with the data core. And this is a list of data core files available for IRP researchers. This includes a multi-sample person file, also known as the MSPF. This includes demographics of all individuals in data systems from the date of creation through 2019. We have a case file, parent-child files, participation files, which are arranged by month or quarter from the early to mid 1990s through 2019. We have crosswalk ID files with other research samples. We have location data, both case location and residential location data, as well as race and ethnicity. All files are linkable by unique IRP constructed personal ID. Identifiers are removed, and the data are improved, updated, and expanded every year. This is the number of records that appear in the master file for WADC from 2011 to 2019. As you can see, in general, the numbers have climbed steadily up. With the exception in 2012, there was a matching error. But since then, the numbers have climbed steadily up, and there was a bigger increase in 2018 because that's when DPI or school data was added. And then in the most recent version of the data core, claims data was added, but there wasn't as much of an increase because many of the claims individuals were already in our CARES data. The MSPF includes people who have died or who have moved out of state. So we have data going back to the 1990s, and we collect data point in time, but we've also collected data over many years. And so that is why the number of records of individuals in our data is a lot higher than the total population of Wisconsin. And also some individuals might be in the master file more than once because there may not have been enough information to match them up. And here are some email contacts of key individuals involved with the data core at IRP. Project proposals, if you have ideas for project proposals, you should direct those to Lynn and Steve. If you have questions about data access and security, you can talk to Maggie Townsend. If you have questions about data contact, feel free to send me an email. You can also visit our website for more information about the data core. And I'm gonna show you that website now. So our homepage is irp.wisc.edu. And if you look all the way to the right, there's a link for the data core. And this website, I know the data core portion of this website is going through some changes and improvements right now. So this might look different. This is being recorded in March of 2021. So it may look different when you're watching this. There's a link to an inquiry form here if you're interested in pursuing a project. There's a link for examples of recent research projects using WADC. And if you scroll down, there's a link to the technical report on lessons learned in the development of the data core. I recommend that you take some time to read that if you're going to be using data core. And right now I'm going to show you this chart of available program data by year. This chart shows the years of data that we have available for different programs. So you can see there's some X's here. Those represent years of incomplete data. So you can see the earliest data that we have goes back to some incomplete data in 1984 and 1988, but nothing in between. That's because we got some data from the CRN system, which predated CARES, and we tried to recover data from tapes, and we weren't able to recover all of it. But we managed to recover data from 1988 and on. So we have data from AFDC, TANF, and medical assistance complete going back to 1989. AFDC data goes through 1998. And then we have TANF data from 1997 through the present. We have food share data going back complete through 1989, and medical assistance data complete back to 1989 as well. We have Medicaid claims data from 2009 through present, and we have childcare subsidies going back to 1997. We have child welfare data going back complete to 2004. Prior to 2004, we didn't have all counties for child welfare data. I can't remember which counties we did have, but anyway, that's why it's incomplete prior to 2004. We have child support data going back to the mid-1990s. We have DOC data. These are release dates for DOC data, which go back to January of 1990. We have Milwaukee jail data that go back to, I believe, November, December of 1993. We have UI wage data going back to 1988. We have UI benefits data going back to the last quarter of 2006. And we have DPI, Department of Public Instruction, school records going back to the 2005-2006 school year. And now I'm going to show you some documentation that we have on files of the data core. It's just a list of all the files that are in there. I'm going to I'll go through the first few in more detail, and the rest I'll go through kind of quickly because there's a lot. So we have our master file, or MSPF file, which is one observation per individual for all individuals in the data sources that we have, including kids, CARE, CRN, DOC, etc. Extracted actually in 2020, up to date from the beginning of the data system through the end of 2019. And for all of our data files, there is a documentation file that goes with it, which I definitely recommend that you read those before you use the data. The data are in SAS format, but I know our researchers usually convert them to some other format before using it. We have a unique identifier or merging ID, IRP ID. All of our files have an IRP ID, and that's how you link them up. And you can see there's 7.9 million records in the master file. This file includes other demographics, including gender, date of birth, and date of death. There are dummy variables indicating data source, CRN, CARES, kids, SACWIS, etc. Those will have a value of 1 if that person existed in that data source. Next, we have our case file. This is 1 observation per individual per case for kids, CRN, CARES, SACWIS, and CRD. Not all of our data sources are arranged by case, but the ones that are will be in this data set. And this includes an IRP ID as well as an IRP case ID. There are variables to indicate the source that the case came from. There's a begin and end date on the case and the person's role on the case. And that this file has over 21 million records. And then we have parent-child files, which are 1 observation per child per parent if 1 could be identified, and at least 1 of 5 data systems: kids, CARES, CRD, SACWIS, and CRN. There's a separate file for moms and dads. And these are the files that you should use to identify mothers and children and fathers and children, their relationships most accurately. There's a race and ethnicity and place of birth file. This is where you can find information on race and ethnicity as well as place of birth for individuals as of 2019 for any individual with any race or ethnicity or place of birth identified. So you can see there's fewer records in this file than there is in the master file, and that's because we don't have race, place of birth, or ethnicity identified for every individual. And we have participation files. I'll go through these really quickly just so you can get an idea of what we have, but if you have further questions about these, feel free to shoot me an email. These files are generally monthly, by year, or sets of years. Some of these are quarterly and some are by event date. So we have AFDC, cash benefits. We have food share data or SNAP data, medical assistance data, W-2 cash benefits data. We have child care subsidy data. We have caretaker supplement data, housing subsidy data from CARES, shelter costs from CARES, SSI, SS, and SSDI data from CARES. We have UI benefits data and UI unemployment spells. We have UI wage records, as well as a file called Avail SSN, which is an indicator of whether we have a valid social security number available for a person. And so if you use UI wage records, it's very important that you use the Avail SSN file so that you know whether we were even able to attempt a match with UI wage records. We have incarceration data from the Wisconsin Department of Corrections, DOC, and Milwaukee Jail data spells. We have current child and family support orders, as well as alimony order amounts, child support orders on past support and interest accounts, held open child support orders, child support payments, child support receipts, more detailed information on child support receipts, child support enforcement events, kids case type, child support arrearages, screened in CPS reports, substantiated CPS allegations, service intake calls from SACWIS, out-of-home placements from SACWIS, voluntary kinship care data from SACWIS. And we have some location files. So we have County of Service location files for CRN kids and SACWIS cases. We also have residential location files from CRN, CARES, kids, SACWIS, CRD, and UI benefits data. There's also a file called in-out state, which indicates for every month whether we know an individual lived in or out of state. We have a crosswalk file between CRD cases and the data core, and sample indicator files are available upon request and permission. So that is all that I had to share with you today. Thank you for tuning in to watch this video, and thank you for your interest in the Wisconsin Administrative Data Core. Feel free to contact me or anyone else from our staff with any questions that you have, and thank you and have a good day.